Welcome to Lead and Inspire with Mr. Hutchings. I'm your host, Mr. Hutchings, and today I'm sharing a topic that doesn't always get the attention it deserves: the role of a high school department head. If you've ever wondered what goes on behind the scenes or you're considering stepping into this role, this episode is for you. Why talk about this? There are plenty of resources about curriculum development, instructional strategies, and educational leadership. But when I stepped into the role of department head, I found that practical advice was hard to come by. There was no handbook on balancing administrative duties with teaching, on navigating the complexities of faculty dynamics, or on advocating for resources while keeping up with the daily demands of students and staff. So that's why we're here, to have an honest conversation about what it means to lead a department in a high school setting. So let me start with this. Being a department head is not just about meetings and paperwork. It's about leadership in the truest sense. Leading a team of educators, setting a vision for instruction, and ensuring that students receive the highest quality education possible. And yes, there's a lot of problem solving along the way. I remember when I first took on the role. One of my initial challenges was addressing a divide in my department. Half the teachers were eager to implement project-based learning, while the others were skeptical, preferring more traditional teaching methods. Instead of forcing one approach, I facilitated discussions, organized peer observations, and encouraged collaboration. Over time, we found a balance, a blended approach that brought the best of both worlds into our classrooms. That was a defining moment for me. Leadership isn't about choosing sides, it's about bringing people together for the best outcomes. Another challenge came when a veteran teacher, known for their rigorous but effective teaching style, clashed with a newer colleague over prioritizing student-led learning. The tension was affecting department morale, and students were caught in the middle of conflicting instructional methods. I decided to set up a series of co-teaching sessions where they each got to see the other in action. What happened was transformative. The veteran teacher saw how student-led activities fostered independence, with the newer teacher recognized the value of structured, direct instruction. Both teachers began to incorporate elements of each other's methods, creating a stronger, more versatile classroom experience for both of them and the students in their classrooms. Leadership also means supporting teachers beyond instructional methods. A few years ago, a teacher came to me on the verge of burnout. The teacher felt overwhelmed by workload, struggled with student engagement, and questioned whether they were making a difference in the classroom. Instead of offering generic encouragement, I paired this struggling teacher with a mentor, helped restructure their lesson planning, and ensured that this teacher took part in professional development sessions focused on classroom management. The following year, they not only stayed in the profession, but took on mentorship roles themselves for another struggling teacher. That's the power of leadership. It's not just about guiding, it's about uplifting others so they can thrive. There are challenges and rewards to the role of head of department. You'll have to advocate for your department. One of the most critical responsibilities of a department head is advocating for resources. Whether it's professional development funding, new textbooks, or technology upgrades, it often falls on the department head to make the case. Without strong advocacy, teachers may struggle with outdated materials, lack of access to training, or insufficient classroom tools, all of which directly impact student learning. Take professional development, for example. When I started, only a handful of teachers were able to attend external workshops each year. This meant that newer teachers, who often needed it the most, were missing out. I proposed a rotating system that ensured equal access. It wasn't easy. Some teachers resisted change, and others worried about missing their turn. To ease concerns, I organized a transparent sign-up system and hosted an internal debriefing session for each workshop, where attendees shared what they had learned with the rest of the department. Over time, the approach built a culture of continuous learning. After a year, the results were clear. Teachers came back energized, shared their learning, and improved classroom instruction across the board. Another example of advocacy involves securing updated technology for our classrooms. Many teachers were still using outdated projectors and struggling with slow, unreliable internet connections. After gathering feedback from staff, I compiled a report detailing how these technological shortcomings were affecting lesson delivery and student engagement. I presented this data to the administration, emphasizing how a modest investment in updated tools would yield substantial benefits. By leveraging testimonials from teachers and data on student engagement, we successfully secured a budget increase, allowing us to upgrade classroom technology. The change was transformative. Lessons became more interactive, students were more engaged, and teachers reported a significant reduction in tech related disruptions. Advocating for your department isn't just about asking for more, it's about making a compelling case with evidence and clear benefits. When department heads take the time to listen to teachers, gather data, and present a strong argument, real change can happen. You'll need to balance administration and teaching. Many department heads are still full time teachers. That means juggling lesson planning, grading, and student support with administrative duties. It's a constant balancing act, and some days it feels like there just aren't enough hours to get everything done. For example, scheduling conflicts can be a nightmare. One year, we faced an unexpected influx of students in advanced courses. The easy solution would have been to overload teachers or turn students away, but neither option was acceptable. Instead, I worked with other administrators and our faculty to adjust schedules, redistribute resources, and even offer creative solutions like independent study programs. It took extra effort, but in the end, students got the classes they needed and teachers weren't overwhelmed. Another challenge is handling last minute teacher absences. One winter, flu season hit hard, and I found myself scrambling to cover multiple classes while managing my own workload. Rather than resorting to a chaotic patchwork of substitute teachers, I worked with faculty members to create a shared emergency lesson bank, an archive of ready to go lessons that any teacher could implement in a pinch. This not only eased the burden of unexpected absences, but also ensured that students continued receiving high quality instruction. Then there's the constant struggle of balancing professional growth with day to day demands. A department head once told me, "You have to find a way to keep learning even when you're too busy to breathe." I took the advice to heart. I set aside time each week, just an hour, to research new instructional strategies, attend a virtual seminar, or simply reflect on department goals. This small but consistent investment in professional growth helped me stay ahead of changes in education and better support my colleagues. The reality is, you'll never find a perfect balance. Some weeks, your administrative duties will take precedence. Other weeks, you'll be buried in grading and lesson planning. But if you approach each day with flexibility and a commitment to both teaching and leadership, you'll find a rhythm that works for you and your team. There's the big picture, leading beyond the classroom. Being a department head extends beyond your own school. It means staying connected with broader educational trends, policy changes, and best practices. It means mentoring new teachers, supporting veteran educators in their professional growth, and ensuring that your department remains strong long after you've moved on. I've learned that leadership isn't just about making decisions, it's about fostering a culture where teachers feel valued, supported, and empowered. A few years ago, I had a teacher who was struggling with confidence. They were passionate but overwhelmed, questioning their ability to manage a classroom effectively. Instead of letting them sink, I set up a structured support system, regular check ins, peer coaching sessions, and a mentor pairing with an experienced teacher. Slowly but surely, they grew into their role, and by the third year, they were leading department workshops on classroom management. Years later, the same teacher stepped into a leadership role, supporting another new teacher going through similar struggles. Seeing that kind of cycle, where a struggling educator becomes a mentor, has been one of the most rewarding aspects of my career. That's the kind of ripple effect that makes this job of head of department worth it. But leadership doesn't stop with supporting teachers. It also means staying ahead of the curve when it comes to policy changes and educational trends. I make it a point to attend state and national conferences, not just for my own department, but so I can bring back valuable insights to my department. One year, after attending a workshop on differentiated instruction, I introduced a department wide initiative to integrate more student centered learning strategies. Some teachers were hesitant at first, but after seeing the impact on student engagement, it became a standard part of our instructional approach. Being a department head means advocating for growth, not just for individual teachers, but for the profession as a whole. It's about ensuring that your team is prepared for the future of education, no matter what changes came their way. What does it take to be department head? Before we get started, let me be upfront. I don't have the definitive answer. In fact, I'm not sure there is one. I've known many department heads, some successful, some not, who had vastly different personalities, different levels of organization, and different approaches to leadership. Some people I thought would excel land up struggling, while others seemed unlikely candidates land up thriving. Ultimately, success as a department head depends as much on the department itself as it does on the individual. Core qualities of a department head. That being said, there are some fundamental qualities that seem essential. A department head should be organized, fair, honest, open minded, and perhaps most importantly, an optimist. That last one might surprise you, but hear me out. Every department will face challenges. As a leader, you must believe that with effort, problems can be solved or at least improved. Without optimism, the job can be overwhelming. I remember a colleague who took over a struggling department. The morale was low, and teachers felt unheard. Instead of immediately enforcing policy, she spent her first month listening. She sat in on classes, hosted open door meetings, and even organized a coffee hour to casually engage with faculty. Within a year, that department transformed, not because of drastic rule changes, but because she built trust and optimism in her team. Perspectives of a successful department head. Rather than simply listing desirable traits, let's consider a few scenarios that highlight the mindset of an effective department head. Scenario 1, the importance of balance. Imagine it's the end of a hectic school day. You're reviewing schedules for the upcoming term when a teacher bursts in, frustrated about an unfair workload. At the same time, an administrator is calling you about a policy update. You have two choices: rush to address both at once, or take a deep breath and prioritize. The best department heads balance administrative responsibilities while staying approachable and responsive to their faculty. Scenario 2, conflict resolution in action. A history teacher and an English teacher are at odds over interdisciplinary projects. The history teacher feels the English department isn't pulling their weight, while the English teacher believes history is being overly rigid. A poor leader might ignore the issue, but a strong department head facilitates a solution, hosting a joint meeting, encouraging collaboration, and reminding them of shared educational goals can turn a disagreement into a constructive partnership. Statements a strong department head should agree with. I'm going to have a total of 10 of these. First, I value communication and collaboration more than rigid authority. 2. Some topics in my field deeply interest me, while others I remain neutral about. 3. I generally enjoy interacting with people and observing how they respond in different situations. 4. I understand that leadership means making tough decisions while considering the well-being of staff and students. 5. Being a department head is a significant role with real consequences for the faculty and students. 6. Being an administrator is also an important job, and their decisions have broad implications. 7. Disagreeing with someone doesn't make me lose respect for them. Differing perspectives are valuable. 8. Logical consistency does not always equal truth. There may be facts I don't know. 9. Education is a great profession, and there is room for people with diverse talents and diverse interests. And 10. It's important to lead people toward meaningful goals, even if sometimes they need a little push. Statements a strong department head should reject. On the flip side, there are statements that a prospective department head should probably reject, and I'll have 8 of these. The first statement a department head should reject is 1. Being the head of the department is just a social role, dining with other administrators, meeting with prospective students, and managing administrative tasks. 2. You should reject the notion that teachers should just figure things out without guidance or support. A good department head would reject number 3. No action should be taken unless at least 2/3 of the faculty agree. Another statement to reject, number 4, most departments run themselves. It's never the case. A fifth statement a department head should reject, my professional development is over. The sixth statement a department head should reject, the most important of my day is my lunch break. The seventh statement one should reject, faculty and staff should strictly follow orders without discussion. And the eighth statement I would think a department head should reject, all human difficulties can be resolved to everyone's satisfaction. Nope, reject that. Interviewing for a high school department head position. We're moving on to one of the most nerve-wracking but crucial steps in educational leadership, interviewing for a department head position. Whether you're vying for the role in your current school or looking to step into leadership at a new institution, the interview process is your chance to demonstrate not just your expertise, but your vision, adaptability, and ability to lead a team. Preparing for the interview, know what you want. Before you step into the room, ask yourself, why do I want this job? Are you eager to support teachers, shape curriculum, improve student outcomes? Understanding your motivation will help you communicate your passion clearly. Let's talk about leverage. How much do you want this job? And how much does the school want you? If you're an internal candidate, you may already have strong relationships, but you'll need to prove you can transition from peer to leader. If you're an external candidate, you bring fresh perspectives, but must work harder to establish credibility. I remember a colleague who was interviewing for a department head at another school. She was well prepared with ideas on curriculum development, but what really won over the hiring committee was her ability to articulate how she would bring the faculty together, how she would listen first and implement change collaboratively. That's what schools want to hear, not just what you'll do, but how you'll build trust in the process. So, the interview, what to expect. Most department head interviews will focus on three main ideas. First, leadership and vision. How will you lead and support your team? Second, curriculum and instruction. How will you shape and improve teaching and learning? The third uh, focus that most interviews will have, collaboration and conflict resolution. How will you handle difficult conversations and build consensus? Expect scenario based questions like, a veteran teacher is resistant to curriculum change. How do you handle it? Your department feels overwhelmed with new initiatives. How do you support them? How would you mediate a conflict between two faculty members with differing teaching philosophies? It's not about the right answer. It's about demonstrating that you can think critically, communicate effectively, and lead with empathy. Negotiating what matters. Here's where many candidates stumble. Either they ask for too little or demand too much. Before you discuss salary, resources, or policy changes, do your homework. What's the school's financial situation? What kind of support have previous department heads received? A common mistake? Walking in with a wish list instead of a strategy. Administrators are more likely to approve one time resource investments, like new classroom technology, over permanent budget increases, like annual travel stipends. Prioritize what matters most and be prepared to explain why. A friend of mine once asked for additional teaching staff during his interview, assuming the school could accommodate it. The administrator smiled and said, "Tell me why that's the best use of our limited budget." Instead of getting defensive, my friend pivoted. He showed how adding a part time faculty member would free up resources for enrichment programs and reduce burnout. The administrator was impressed, and the request was granted. Making the right impression. Let's be real. Schools aren't just looking for knowledge, they're looking for a fit. Can you work with the administration? Do you understand the school's culture? Are you adaptable? This is where thoughtful questions come in. Instead of just answering what's asked, engage in conversation. Ask, how does the administration view the department's role in the school's broader mission? What are the biggest challenges this department has faced in recent years? What kind of leadership style has worked best in this role before? Should you accept the appointment? We're tackling a big decision here, one that could redefine your professional life. Should you accept the position of department head? A pay raise? Sure, that's nice. But let's be honest, it's not enough. You'll work for that money, and your life will change in ways you might not expect. As a teacher, you have a level of independence, a freedom in your classroom that allows for creativity and control. Becoming a department head means giving up some of that autonomy in exchange for responsibility, sometimes an overwhelming amount of it. Before you say yes, let's talk about what really matters. Do you have a vision? A department head without a vision is like a ship without a rudder, driftive, drifting, reactive, and ultimately ineffective. If you're stepping into this role, ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish? I once knew a teacher who took on the department head role because they had a dream to integrate more technology into the curriculum, giving students hands on learning opportunities beyond the textbook. They were passionate, driven, and full of ideas. But the reality? Progress was slow. Roadblocks appeared everywhere: budget constraints, reluctant colleagues, administrators who had other priorities. They left the position after 3 years feeling frustrated, burnt out, and questioning whether it was worth it. The lesson? Big dreams are great, but they need flexibility. If your success is tied to one goal and one goal only, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Adaptability is key. Do you like people, even when they don't like you? Being a department head means making tough decisions, ones that will inevitably be met with resistance. You might grant one another a reduced course load. You might grant one teacher a reduced course load for curriculum development, only to have another argue that they were more deserving. You could decide to shift teaching assignments to improve efficiency, only to have a longtime faculty member resist change, feeling their seniority should protect them from such shifts. One department I had, one department head I spoke to had to introduce a new grading policy to standardized assessments across all classes. While it was designed to create fairness, the response was anything but unified. Some faculty saw it as necessary progress, while other faculty members saw it as an unnecessary intrusion into their classroom autonomy. The backlash was immediate, but with patience, clarity, and consistent communication, the department ultimately came to embrace the change. A veteran department head once told me, "You have to be okay with the fact that some people just won't like you, not because you're unfair or bad at your job, but because you're the one making the calls." And they were right. Leadership isn't about being popular. It's about doing what's right for the department, even when it's uncomfortable. The question is, can you handle faculty members coming to you with complaints, frustrations, and sometimes outright hostility? Can you listen, respond with fairness, and not take it personally? If so, you might just be the leader your department needs. Is it just your turn to be department head? Some schools operate on a rotating leadership model. Well, it's my turn. And while that might sound like a reasonable reason to take the role, let me challenge you, just filling the seat is not enough. I once met a department head who stepped into the role with no real plan. They showed up to meetings, approved budgets, and forwarded emails, but that was about it. 3 years passed, and the department remained exactly as it was before. Same challenges, same frustrations, same missed opportunities. Teachers felt unheard, and initiatives stalled. The only thing that changed? The person got a pay bump. Contrast that with another leader I worked with. She stepped in for a 2 year term with one clear goal: building a stronger sense of collaboration among teachers. From day one, she took action. She organized monthly brainstorming sessions where teachers could share challenges and solutions. She introduced a shared digital resource bank so no one had to reinvent the wheel every semester. She even arranged for cross discipline projects so students can see connections between subjects. By the time she left the role, her successor had a roadmap to follow, and the department was energized in a way it hadn't been before. Then there's the story of a science department head who came into it with a different priority: advocating for updated lab equipment. Instead of just asking for funds in a single meeting, he spent months collecting data, documenting outdated materials, gathering feedback from teachers, and demonstrating how improved resources would impact student learning. When he finally made his pitch to administrators, he had a compelling evidence based argument. The result? A phased upgrade plan that brought better tools to every science classroom over 3 years. If you're taking the job just because it's your turn, stop and ask yourself, what will I actually do with it? If you don't have an answer, maybe step aside for someone who does. Because leadership isn't just about occupying a position, it's about making a difference. If I don't take it, someone else will. Honestly, that's a fair reason. Sometimes you look around and think, if I don't take this role, someone completely unqualified or worse, destructive might take it. But if that's your reason, don't just take the job to block someone else. Take it to build something better. Leadership isn't just about preventing disaster, it's about creating opportunity. If you see faculty members divided into cliques, bring them together. If morale is low, find ways to boost engagement and motivation. If resources are being mismanaged, advocate for a more strategic approach. The goal isn't just to maintain the status quo, it is to elevate the department. A history teacher I knew stepped into the department head role for precisely this reason, to block someone else from getting it. They were worried that if they didn't take the job, a rigid, unsupportive candidate would be the department head. But instead of simply keeping the department's head seat warm, they used the opportunity to build a culture of collaboration. They established weekly coffee chats where faculty could share ideas informally, restructured department meetings to be more productive, and fought for professional development funding. Within a year, teachers who had once worked in silos were now exchanging lesson plans and co teaching projects. Another example, a science teacher took on the headship because they feared a candidate with no interest in STEM advocacy would take over. This person worked tirelessly to secure grants for new lab equipment, partnered with local universities to bring in guest speakers, and introduced STEM competitions that energized both students and staff. The result? A department that went from feeling underfunded and feeling overlooked to one that thrived with innovation and excitement. Yes, taking the job to prevent a poor leader from stepping in is a valid reason. But the real question is, once you have the role, what will you do with it? Don't just hold the line, move the line forward. Why did I enjoy being a department head? I want to talk about something I don't hear enough people say. I actually enjoy being a department head. I know. That's not the expected response. Most of the time, when you hear people talk about stepping into leadership roles, it's complaints about paperwork, budget meetings, or the never ending emails. And yet, here I am saying it proudly, I enjoyed the job. And if you're considering stepping into this role, I want you to share why it could be one of the most rewarding positions in education. The people make it worthwhile. Let's start with this. I find people fascinating, not just students, but teachers. The way they approach their work, their passion for their subjects, their quirks, their frustrations. It's all part of what makes a school thrive. As a department head, I get to see sides of my colleagues that I never would have noticed before. Take one of my first experiences as department head. I had a teacher who was brilliant in the classroom but struggled behind the scenes. Her lesson planning was disorganized and she was overwhelmed by grading. She wasn't failing, but she wasn't thriving either. Before taking on this role, I might not have noticed. But as a department head, I had the opportunity to step in, not with criticism, but with support. We sat down, restructured her workflow, and introduced small changes that made a world of difference. 6 months later, she told me, I was ready to quit, Mr. Hutchings, but this actually made me love teaching again. Moments like this reminded me why I loved being department head. The problem solving is engaging. I always loved puzzles, the kind that requires creativity, patience, and sometimes a bit of trial and error. Running a department is the ultimate puzzle, one that changes every day. One moment, you're handling a schedule conflict where two teachers both need the same classroom. The next, you're sitting down with a faculty member who's feeling overwhelmed and questioning whether they belong in education at all. And then there are the curriculum adjustments, student concerns, budget negotiation. It never ends. The trick is, the problems aren't neat and the solutions are rarely straightforward, but that's what keeps the job so engaging. As examples of what keeps the job engaging, I'm going to refer back to two scenarios I mentioned earlier because they're also appropriate here. And I'm referring to um, an example I shared with you earlier in this podcast of a sudden shift of enrollment where more students enrolled in advanced coursework than what was expected. The easy answer would just be to overload teachers with increased classes or more students in classes or just turn students away, but that wasn't an option. So instead, I collaborated with different teachers and shifted some resources around and adjusted schedules to create new opportunities without compromising the quality of instruction. It took some creative problem solving, a lot of discussion with my colleagues, and even some out of the box thinking, but in the end, we were able to accommodate everybody. A second scenario, which I did share earlier, was about two teachers. Um, One that a younger teacher that wanted project based learning, who valued hands on engagement, and the other older teacher wanted traditional lecture to maintain rigor. And simply their disagreements were valid, but they escalated to a point where they were openly dismissing each other's approaches in meetings. The wrong thing would have been is to ignore it. So instead, being more solution minded, I arranged for them to co observe each other's classrooms, and we had followed up by structured conversations about their methods. And no, they didn't become best friends overnight, but what did happen was an unexpected middle ground. By seeing each other's strengths, they blended their strategies, and they created a classroom model that combined structures from both types of engagements, and that's leadership, not forcing a not forcing a resolution, but guiding people to find common ground that benefits everyone, especially the students. Each challenge in this role as head of department is different, and no 2 days look the same, but that's what keeps it exciting. It's about approaching each new issue with an open mind, problem solving attitude, and the willingness to adapt. And in the end, seeing things come together is one of the most rewarding experiences a department head can have. Shaping the future of education. One of the most fulfilling parts of being a department head is knowing that I have a voice in how we shape the learning experience, not just for my students in my own classroom, but for an entire department. I remember sitting in a budget meeting when the topic of professional development funding came up. Historically, our school only sent a handful of teachers to conferences each year. Often, the same few who had been attending the same conferences for years. Meanwhile, newer teachers and those eager to explore new instructional strategies rarely got the opportunity. I knew we had passionate, innovative educators in our department who wanted to grow, but our current system wasn't serving them. I proposed a new system, one that would distribute the budget more equitably, ensuring that a wider range of teachers had access to meaningful training. And it wasn't just about fairness, it was about investing in our entire department's ability to bring knowledge back to our students. Of course, change doesn't happen without pushback. Some teachers question whether newer teachers should be prioritized over veterans. Others worried about the logistics of covering for multiple absent teachers at once. We piloted a rotation system, one that allowed both experienced and new faculty members to benefit from professional development opportunities while ensuring instructional continuity. The next year, we saw twice as many teachers attending workshops. More importantly, these teachers came back energized, excited to implement new ideas, and eager to share their learning with their colleagues. We created an in house professional development session where returning teachers would present key takeaways, ensuring that even those who hadn't attended conferences still benefited from the latest research and best practices. And that's when I realized the true power of leadership. It's not just about making administrative decisions, it's about empowering others to grow, bringing fresh ideas into the classroom, and creating a ripple effect that ultimately benefits students. That's why the department head is a great job. A sense of purpose. Here's the truth. When I was a full time teacher, I sometimes wondered if what I did extended beyond the classroom. Sure, I saw my students thrive, but was I making a broader impact? Was my influence limited to the students in front of me, or was I helping shape the educational experience on a larger scale? As a department head, I see it clearly and daily. Every decision I made, every teacher I supported, every small policy I advocated for, all shaped the experience of hundreds, if not thousands, of students. That's powerful, and it's a responsibility I took seriously. One of the most rewarding moments I had as a department head came with a struggling new teacher who confided in me that they were close to leaving their profession. They felt overwhelmed, unsupported, and unsure if they were cut out for teaching. Instead of letting them slip through the cracks, I connected them with a mentor, provided extra resources, and regularly checked in on their progress. A year later, that same teacher had not only gained confidence, but became one of the strongest educators in our department, leading professional development sessions for their peers. The transformation reinforced why the job of department head is amazing. It's not about control. It's not about power. It's about service. It's about knowing that I have the opportunity to help good teachers become great ones, to support educators so they can bring themselves to the classroom and make it their best selves, and to make sure that their students are getting the education they deserve. Another example, one of my biggest challenges was ensuring consistency and how we assessed different student learning across the different classrooms. Left unchecked, students in the same grade level but different teachers were experiencing vastly different expectations. Some were being pushed to their full potential, while other students were left behind. By collaborating with my team, we developed a shared assessment approach, one that maintained rigor while allowing teachers the flexibility to bring their unique teaching styles into play. The results? Greater equity in grading, better communication among staff, and improved student performance. These are the moments that make the challenges worth it, because when you step into a leadership role with the mindset of serving others, the impact you create is not just significant, it's lasting. Final thoughts. Being a department head isn't just about administration, it's about leadership, collaboration, and making a lasting impact. It's about finding the ways to support teachers so they can do their best work and ensuring students get the education they deserve. It's a role that requires balance between authority and teamwork, optimism and realism, leading and listening. It comes with challenges, but also with meaningful victories, both big and small. Of course, the challenges are real. I've had to mediate conflicts between teachers with opposing philosophies, make tough decisions about resources, and yes, tackle a seemingly endless pile of paperwork. One of the hardest moments I faced was telling a beloved teacher that their contract wouldn't be renewed due to budget cuts. No amount of preparation makes these conversations easy, but leadership isn't about avoiding difficult decisions, it's about handling them with honesty, empathy, and professionalism. If you're considering stepping into this position, ask yourself, do I have a vision for my department? Can I navigate difficult decisions without letting personal bias get in the way? Am I ready to lead by example? I once mentored a teacher who hesitated to apply for a leadership role because he thought he wasn't strict enough to be taken seriously. But leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the most effective one. When he finally took the leap and became a department head, he realized that his ability to listen and collaborate made him a stronger leader than he'd ever imagined. Yes, there will be bureaucracy. Yes, there will be days when you feel like you're being pulled in 100 different directions. But there will also be those moments, the ones that remind you why you took on this challenge in the first place. Like the first time a new initiative you pushed for actually works. Or the moment a struggling teacher thanks you for believing in them. Or when you see students thriving because of the changes you helped implement. If you're in it for the title or the pay bump, think twice. But if you genuinely want to make a difference, then maybe, just maybe, this move is right for you. That's all for today's episode. If you're a department head or thinking about becoming one, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Send me a message or leave a review. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I can use the money. I'm Mr. Hutchings, and this has been Lead and Inspire with Mr. Hutchings.